Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
I would tell people to go to the Lizzie Borden house with caution. And I know that there's different owners now too, so I have no idea what's going on there, but I can tell you that night I definitely encountered something.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we shine a light on people striving to make the world a better place. Today, in the spirit of Halloween, a paranormal investigator on what we can learn from the afterlife. Amanda Paulson has been studying paranormal activity for over a decade. She's traveled the country looking for and communicating with ghosts. She'll share some of her most wild adventures and tell you what to do if you're ever face to face with a paranormal being. Amanda and I just had a riveting conversation. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that we, as the living, can work and fine-tune our muscle in our mind and our spirit to have interactions with ghosts. Really, really fascinating. So enjoy the episode with Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So obviously, your line of work as a ghost hunter is a little bit different than, the typical people we've had on the show. So let's go back to, your journey, how you got into this space, into this line of work.
Absolutely. So my journey started when I was just 7 years old, when I began seeing ghosts at a place that I like to call a haunted duplex that I lived in with my parents in Montana. I ended up seeing ghosts throughout my entire life. And when I was 18, I finally decided to join a ghost hunting group in Montana as well. And I got my start with this ghost hunting group professionally investigating private residences as well as businesses. And then later on, I started my blog, Pretty Effin' Spooky, in 2019. And I've been a solo paranormal investigator ever since.
So I want to go back to that because I think of I have kids that are 7, 8 years old, and I'm thinking, okay, if I'm in their shoes, so what's going on in your mind as a 7-year-old? Do you actually believe what you're seeing? Do you think, what's happening there when you were a kid?
Yeah, I love this question actually, because when I was that young seeing ghosts, I first was terrified. I didn't enjoy it and I didn't want it to happen. I also grew up in a traditionally religious household that didn't really leave room for ghosts to exist or to be anything but evil in their minds. So I kind of often wondered, why is this happening to me? Is this real? Was a question I asked myself a lot. And as a child, I also had some very traumatic things happen to me throughout my childhood that kind of developed this doubt in my head that as I got older, I started to wonder, what was childhood trauma manifesting in the way of, quote, imaginary best friends or imaginary friends, and what was true paranormal activity. And that is something well into my 30s now that I've had to kind of grapple and understand better. But as a 7-year-old seeing ghosts, I was scared, I was confused, and it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to be a part of my life, but then persisted on for the rest of my life anyway.
So that kind of first experiences, was it like conversation or just you observed kind of in the background, wow, it's like this ghost in the background? And what does the ghost look like?
Sure. So when I was very young, it really started when I was trying to go to bed, which I think now people would say, you were just seeing things in the shadows or your imagination was getting the best of you. But it began that way at night, seeing things move in the corner of my eye or watching some of the dolls in my room move. But then it started to manifest in the daytime, and specifically in the way of what we call poltergeist activity, which is essentially, in simple terms, is objects moving on their own and kind of this not necessarily intelligent apparition, but really just kind of paranormal happenings going on in my bedroom and in my house. I would have dreams where I would communicate with these things. And a lot of it kind of didn't manifest into like a full bodied apparition until later on. So when I was very young, it was mostly in the way of shadows, and things kind of moving when they shouldn't be. And then later on throughout, like, especially into high school, into my teen years, is when I started to see, to actually see kind of more, I guess, solid apparitions or things that kind of made more sense as the traditional ghost that we know today. But it didn't start out that way.
Is it that do you think that everybody's able to see ghosts? It's just that they just don't comprehend it, or that you're gifted, I guess, to see them, would you say?
I personally, and this is all personal opinion, because I think that what each of us believes is true for us and is our truth. But my truth is that I don't believe it's a gift. I think that it's something that you can, like a muscle that you can exercise. I think it's something that everyone can tap into. But I think some people are naturally more inclined, just like you're naturally more inclined to instruments or to sports or things like that. But I do think that it's something that a skill that you can hone. And that is something that I've personally done over the years, because after my initial childhood experiences, I, for a time, rejected it and didn't want it to happen. And in that time, it slowed down and I didn't have the same experiences that I used to have. And then as I got older and I wanted to explore it more, I had to start making it happen again, so to speak, or making myself more open to it. So honing that skill is something I'm very familiar with. And I think that everyone can do that if they want to.
And it's interesting you said that you joined a team. I didn't realize there's actually like teams that go hunting for ghosts. How'd that come to be? This team that you found?
Yeah, there are definitely teams. This was 2008, so this was the height of paranormal TV, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, things like that. Some listeners might know those shows, but it was very popular in media at the time. When I joined this group, I found them on Facebook. They gave me an interview. It was very professional, and they accepted me as a team member. I think we had around 12 or 13 of us on the team, all different ages, all different skill sets. And this team in particular was very professional. They gave me a lot of my background in, logging paranormal investigations, keeping very good paperwork, making sure you get all the necessary signatures from owners to make sure that, we're legally allowed to be there. They gave me a lot of experience in those ways. But yes, there were many teams when I joined that one team that I was on, called Billings Paranormal Investigative Society in Billings, Montana.
So you track down, actually practically what's going on is you're tracking down these ghosts to record them for the media or just to gain knowledge? What was the intention?
So at the time of that team, the intention was, it's changed and shifted over time for myself. But at that time, the intention was to find irrefutable proof of the paranormal. So we were very tech heavy, very interested in the quote scientific methods to record paranormal activity so that we could show it to people who didn't believe, or could show it as like some kind of proof of the existence of the other side. But as I've gotten older, and especially as I've transitioned to do all of the work I do online, my purpose has changed a little bit, and I'm not so much interested in proving this to the non-believer, but more interested in exploring it as a way to explore the self and to grow as a human being and to kind of expand my living experience. So it's become much more personal. And then of course there is the other element of wanting to share it online as a form of entertainment, as a form of, giving people something to relate to. If other people have been interested in the paranormal, giving them content to say, hey, you're not the only one, you're not weird. There are lots of us out here who enjoy it. So it's changed over time, but the team was more about finding irrefutable proof of ghosts.
And are there different types of ghosts, and what exactly are they? Like, in other words, is it someone that had passed and their soul or spirit? Is that really what it is?
That depends on who you're asking, to be honest. But I believe in all of the different answers that you could find for this question. So I do believe that there are ghosts out there that are the spirit of a deceased person. I also believe in the possibility for the living to haunt places. Our energy is palpable. If you're a spiritual person in any way, you know how powerful living human energy can be. And I believe that that has the power and ability to kind of imprint on certain situations in certain places. So a lot of people would call hauntings like that an egregore. And that can be, an intentional haunting of living energy or an accidental haunting of living energy. For instance, a tragedy or something that has a lot of emotional power behind it. So the short of it is that I believe that ghosts are both of the deceased and of the living. So I think that the answers to questions like that kind of become very big the longer you search for it, and the more that you see, and the more I seek the other side or to see the paranormal, the more I realize that the living has such a huge part to do with the way that paranormal activity manifests. So.
Just a quick reminder, this is the Common Denominator Podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd be grateful if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review, and subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already done so. Thanks so much. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I've heard of stories where beyond nature, where people, I forgot the exact term for it, where they're able to take their soul or their spirit and travel, like kind of quantum travel.
Astral projection.
Astral projections, yes. And they have documentation of that. They have, right, you could be somewhere in another country, you can observe something that's happening. Obviously, it takes tremendous work and intention. I believe that. I believe that that's possible. The human energy, like you're saying, has that ability. I know they've documented some of those stories. So that's probably, within the living. When you come in contact with these different energies, are they generally friendly or neutral?
Yeah, I would say generally friendly, or at least, willing to communicate, or to, kind of play along. But I have on occasion come across spirit energy that is not friendly, although it is less common. So I can probably name, a handful of experiences that felt unsavory, whereas all of the other experiences have felt agreeable. Whatever I'm communicating with is willing to communicate with me and likely wants to be heard as much as I want to hear it. So luckily there's not as much negative out there as I think is portrayed in media. I think it's often portrayed, in movies, especially, this kind of fear or threat of demonic energy. And I personally, the way that I approach the paranormal doesn't lead to me coming across energy like that very often. But I do know that for some people that possibility is very real. And I always like to respect that, because I do think, again, that what we believe is true can be our reality. So if that evil is real for somebody, it's real.
That's actually 100% of the time the truth. You live in your reality. That's all of us, right? Is there, just in general, if anybody does encounter a ghost, is there things that they shouldn't do, they should be aware of, or be careful about?
Yeah, so it depends on if you encounter a ghost on accident or if you encounter a ghost when you're trying to encounter a ghost. But on accident, I know it can be very scary and very jarring when, maybe you stay at a haunted hotel and all of a sudden a ghost is visiting you in the middle of the night. That, of course, you're probably not going to think in the moment to sit up and talk with it. But I always encourage people to try not to run or to treat it. I encourage people to treat ghosts with kindness, because if it is a human spirit, then you want to treat them like you would treat another living person, with kindness. And but other than that, I always tell people too, if they're going to go into seeking out the other side intentionally, to have a very good understanding of your North Star, your purpose for doing it, and also what your personal belief system is. So we all have different religious belief systems, or maybe you don't have one and you just are interested in exploring the other side, but make sure that you have a clear idea of what that is and what makes you feel safe before kind of entering into a haunted location on purpose. If praying does it for you, go for it. Just know that ahead of time. Or, if you have some other kind of ritual that you like to do, whatever. But I like to tell people to really get to know themselves and what they think they believe about the other side first before contacting it.
So I got to ask you this, because I know Lizzie Borden, she was alleged, I know she was acquitted, to have murdered her father and stepmother in her house back in the 1800s. And I know today it's a bed and breakfast, and I know that you stayed in that house by yourself. How was that experience?
I did stay alone at Lizzie Borden's house, and it was a complete accident, actually. I rented a room in Lizzie Borden's house on Easter on accident in 2021, and nobody else, imagine that, decided to stay on Easter in Lizzie Borden's house. It was absolutely terrifying. I had a very, very weird night. Activity started when I was eating dinner. Even I was trying to be on my phone and eat dinner in my room. And I started to hear somebody walking around my room, walking around upstairs, even though I had been given a tour of the entire house and there was no one there. On my page on Instagram, I have a video there, which is a live stream of me for about 3 hours of me live streaming in my room, just sitting cross-legged, afraid to move entirely. I didn't actually end up doing any investigating except for just being terrified all night, and actually ended up sleeping in my car by about 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
It was terrifying. I'm not scared very often, but that was one of the scariest nights of my life.
So it does exist, right? So you just got to be careful in which situation you're in. Wow.
Yeah, that's actually one of those few instances where I felt like the energy was not nice. One of the very few. Yeah.
Wow.
I would tell people to go to the Lizzie Borden house with caution. And I know that there's different owners now too, so I have no idea what's going on there, but I can tell you that night I definitely encountered something.
And I know you made a choice to take a break and from kind of ghost hunting, and then you came back to it. How'd that happen? What was the reason, kind of in your journey, personal journey?
Yeah. So the break that I took was in my 20s. So it was kind of twofold. On one hand, I was scared by the experiences I was having. And on the other hand, I was in my 20s and I wanted to kind of experience my 20s without the paranormal being a factor. And I felt very othered by my interest in ghosts. Like I felt sort of weird, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I wanted to fit in. So, I mean, that's a very simple answer to that. I took a break because I wanted to enjoy being young and partying and having fun. But on the other hand, like I said, I was very scared of what was going on. I, in particular, started having a lot of sleep paralysis, which if people are familiar with sleep paralysis, it's a very scary sleep phenomenon that paralyzes you and creates like hallucinations. It's what they say, but some people believe that it might be real. And I had many years of sleep paralysis that really frightened me. And that also had to do with the break that I decided to take. And then finally, by 2019, like I said, I started posting online and started doing paranormal investigations again more actively. And that was triggered by a loss in my family. My grandpa, who was my dad, he passed away. And it started kicking back up that paranormal activity, the paranormal stuff that I was experiencing. And then I kind of thought, I'm older now. I'm in my late 20s. I think I can kind of confront this and sort of try to dig deeper and understand why I've been experiencing this my whole life now. So that's kind of the trajectory of the ebb and flow of my interest in the paranormal.
So it's kind of like, I know that your focus right now is kind of paranormal emotions and intuition. I always say like intuition is like kind of like God speaking to you or the universe. What's that work look like?
Yeah, in the last couple years, specifically triggered by a lot of time spent out on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, which is a very kind of primordial, very interesting energy out there. I started developing an interest in how my living emotions play into the paranormal activity that I'm witnessing. So I started kind of contemplating the idea that maybe when I'm feeling nostalgic or when I'm having deja vu or I'm experiencing synchronicities, that maybe these are times in which I am closer to the other side or the other side is closer to me. So I started kind of exploring those emotions and investigating them on their own as if my own emotions are ghosts themselves. I also started digging deeper into that too when I experienced a traumatic event early last year. I was in a like I got caught up in a gang related crime on accident, and it was very traumatic. But that kind of felt like it almost chipped off a part of me, a part of my soul in a way. I think some people call it soul fracturing, but I thought that concept was fascinating, in the fact that I could possibly be haunting the place as I'm living. I could be haunting that place that traumatic event happened. So this all kind of snowballed into me exploring these odd emotions and these paranormal emotions and how that plays into, again, how paranormal activity manifests around me. And it's been very insightful for me, both on one hand to give me less fear in my search of traditional ghosts, in my ghost hunts and the things that I do that are more fun and lighthearted, but then also as a way to dig deeper into myself and understand myself better as well.
I know you've done recently a documentary, Death is With Me. How was that experience, kind of whole crew and actually putting out this documentary? How was that for you?
It was a brand new experience for me. I'm not an actress, or I wasn't in any capacity. I didn't know what it was like to be with a documentary film crew. And then there was that added layer of needing to provide insightful paranormal investigations on camera, on cue, which is very strange. But I found myself very excited by the entire process and also very proud of the final result that we came up with. I was impressed with the ability to be able to contact the other side when I needed to, and it provided. And I had still some doubts in my head about, I mean, truthfully, frankly, I've wondered over time, is ghost hunting real? Is this even possible? It's silly. Yeah, sometimes I even think some of the stuff I do is silly, but to be able to witness myself, with this documentary crew trying to contact a specific entity and then having intelligent responses or very, incredible results, I was like, there's something to this. It is like calling somebody up on the phone. There is somebody on the other side,
What would you say is the number one thing kind of sticks out to you now that you've done the documentary to that experience?
The number one thing that sticks out to me after that documentary experience, well, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of more like a bit of a love letter to my area. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and again, back to the primordial energy that is in the Olympic Peninsula, and the very ancient energy that is there and largely untapped. I came away with a huge appreciation for the Pacific Northwest and for that area in particular, and a big sense of wonder in what else is out there beyond my scope of understanding or even my own belief system. There was a lot that I came in contact with that I didn't previously believe in, like Sasquatch activity or, Fae activity or whatever, things that I had always kind of scoffed at or laughed at, I was faced with and have a bigger respect for now.
It's interesting in general. I think the more we peel back layers and we open our mind and get rid of our conclusions, the more things become possible, right?
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. What would you say to people, there are obviously a lot of skeptics. What would you say to them regarding ghosts?
Oh man, what would I say that I haven't already said? I guess what I would say to skeptics is, you know, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm holding my tongue, but the first thing that comes to mind is, at what point do other people's personal beliefs not affect you and do not need to be part of, not need to be something that you refute, I guess. It might seem silly to believe in ghosts, but what harm is it doing? There is some harm, but to kind of remember that balance of is telling somebody that something isn't real necessary? But also, like I've said before, to reiterate, I believe that ghosts can be all encompassing, the living and the dead. So to skeptics, I would suggest exploring the concepts that I've mentioned about the possibilities of the living being able to haunt a location as well as the dead. And perhaps then skeptics' viewpoint can be kind of widened and maybe more acceptable in some instances, to look at paranormal activity like a mirror instead of some kind of fantastical idea.
So I ask all guests this, and I have an instinct what I think it'll be, but what is something right now that you're really grateful for?
I have been thinking a lot about gratitude this last week. Actually, it's funny that you asked that, but I've been really grateful for my health lately, which seems simple, but and I'm still young, but just as I perceive the people in my life who maybe have some health that is failing them, or a part of their body that's failing them, I'm very grateful for the ability to do the things that I do and explore and travel. I'm very grateful for my health.
Appreciate that. And what is something about you that people don't know?
My favorite color is Barbie pink, hot pink. I think people expect it to be black or something more doom and gloom. I love pink.
I like that. I really super informative. I know for me, and I definitely think for the listeners, really interesting. And I tend to go down these rabbit holes, and I'm going to begin that tonight on this subject. So thank you. I want to say thank you again for joining us. And how could people follow you on social and hear more about your experiences?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can be found at Pretty FN Spooky on all social media platforms, as well as prettyfnspooky.com. That's FN, not the real word, prettyfnspooky.com.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It's really been
You're welcome.
A pleasure. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Amanda. Please subscribe to our YouTube page so you never miss an episode. And if you're currently listening to the show, we'd be grateful for a 5-star rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.